If you're a plumbing company owner or a friend in the trades, you're in the right place. Today's guest is someone I've been excited to speak with for a long time, Danny Leibrandt. Danny is the founder of Pest Control SEO and a recognized expert in local search marketing.
Paul, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
So Danny, in this episode, I thought it would be really valuable. We'd like to talk about your background because you've built, in just 2 years, a tremendous success in building your own online omnipresence. For plumbing company owners, building a local podcast can be the next evolution in building local trust. After you've built hundreds of reviews, you've joined your local associations, what more can a plumbing company owner do? Podcasting is one step. For example, interview everybody that there is in the local chamber and then promote those interviews hyper-locally on YouTube with ads so that you are everywhere and associated with the mayor, with your chamber president, and with all the other business leaders locally. That's what many marketers are doing in developing their own brands, and the question will become, is this something that a plumbing company owner can do? I can't think of anybody who's better positioned than you to speak to that. And I thought today, if we can go through your podcasting journey, how you got started, and then if there's time, let's talk about the other part of your expertise, which is SEO. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love talking about podcasting, and I believe in it so much that I even started a second one. I realized that doing SEO is super powerful. I also realized that doing it for home service businesses would be super powerful because my dad owns a flooring company. So I've always been acquainted with his company. He's had his company for over 20 years, been running it for a while. Now he's kind of just, hanging out, chilling. He doesn't really care about growing the company too much. But at the time, at least, which was a few years ago, he was like, yeah, we've just gotten no leads and I don't know what to do. And he was actually one of the biggest flooring contractors in the US. And he was getting his leads. He had a big deal with Empire and he was the number one flooring contractor for Empire. And for whatever reason, they got new management. They're like, dude, you're making way too much money from us. And they cut him off and he was just like left in the desert. He didn't know what to do. So I originally helped my dad get his SEO going, helped him build a new website, helped him get his Google business profile going, get citations and socials and all these different things. So that was almost like my incubation project. It was like, I kind of got to figure out everything there of, this is what we can do on the Google business profile. Okay, I guess we should make some posts. Okay, I guess I'll start watching all the top people in local SEO. And I started watching guys like Bradley Benner and Darren Shaw and Joy Hawkins and Luke Durand and all these different people in the industry. And I realized that this was a great route to go down of doing something like SEO for home service local businesses because my dad, and then, I also know some guys in construction and I know some guys in HVAC, and all of them are struggling desperately with digital marketing, especially these older guys, 50 to 60 years old, which I'm sure is about your target market, which is plumbers, which is why I'm glad that we're talking about home services and why this is relevant. So that was about 2 years ago or so. And around that time, like we talked about off the call, is I met my mentor, Dennis Yu. He reached out to me on Twitter. He saw I was posting a lot. I was growing my personal brand. I had about 8,000 followers at that time. We got connected. We got on a call and he's like, you're in Chicago, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I'm going to a conference in Chicago in 3 days. I'd love for you to come. I was like, okay, awesome. So I go to this conference with him. We hit it off. And on that call, actually, originally, he was like, oh yeah, how's that thing you're doing going? You're building websites for agency owners. I was like, well, actually, I'm thinking of pivoting into doing SEO for home service local businesses. And he was like, dude, you totally should, and I can help you. And, for those that don't know Dennis Yu, he's a super big name in the space. He's coached a lot of agency owners. He's super affiliated with Josh Nelson, and he has his own education program and such. So he's helped a lot of agency owners grow from nothing to millions of dollars and that kind of thing.
And he's also had a collaboration with Roger Wakefield, which many people in plumbing know. Before we jump into the nuts and bolts of how you built your podcast, you also take your podcasting on the road. You actually went internationally, and I caught a great podcast that you and Dennis did in front of the pyramids of Giza. where else have you been in to do your on-site podcasts? And tell us about how'd you travel to Egypt?
Yeah. So the Egypt one was fun. First, I'll cover where we've done it. So that's definitely the craziest one. So me and my mentor, Dennis, were traveling. We did a big trip pretty recently. That was about 2-3 months ago. We went to London, and really, actually, we just booked tickets to and from London, and it was 17 days apart. So we just got to figure out whatever we want to do in the middle of that time. So we were in London, and we were trying to figure out like the best places to go because, we don't have much time. We're busy entrepreneurs. So what do we do? What are the best places to go? We were like, okay, well, let's go to Athens. So we went to Athens. We saw the Acropolis and all of that crazy stuff. And then we were in Athens, and we were looking at the map. It was so funny because, we work online and we had some free time, so we can kind of just pick where we want to go. That concept is so crazy. So we go to Google Maps, and I'm just like scrolling around the globe of like, where can we go? And we're like, wait, Egypt is like only 2 hours away. Is that right? Because Athens is fairly south. We're like, should we just go to Egypt? We were almost like joking about it at first. And then we actually went to Egypt. And we filmed a podcast in front of the pyramids, but that's definitely the craziest one. There's nothing that even compares to that. We did do one in Jerusalem, but that was just in our hotel, so you wouldn't even know.
And the rest are in your studio. So then, to bring this back on center, for a plumber who's thinking about, well, how can I jump into the digital age with a podcast? It doesn't have to be that elaborate, but before we get into your advice on how to start it, talk about the why and show us the knowledge panel that you've achieved. And that's a pretty big deal. Would you mind screen sharing and taking us on a little tour of what this 2-year effort that you put together in how many episodes have you done now?
51.
51. So 51 being your core production. Before explaining how you did that, explain why you did that and what's the motivation for a plumber, and show us exactly how Google has rewarded you.
I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Forgive me 1 second. Okay, we're shared, and I'll search up my name here.
Awesome.
Okay, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So this is what's called a knowledge panel. Now this whole concept might seem kind of crazy, and Paul, you're telling me like, Danny, you move way too fast. So I'll try to go through this slow and go through this in depth. So first off, Google understands things by entities and the way that the entities relate to each other. So an entity you can think of as a noun, which a noun would be a person, place, or thing. So like you can see here, Danny Leibrandt is an entity. Paul Benton is an entity. Your company and my company, Pest Control SEO, my podcast, Local Marketing Secrets, because all of those are distinct things. Danny Leibrandt is a distinct thing. Instagram is an entity. That is a distinct thing. So first off, that's what we have to understand is this is how Google understands things, is that it is a collection of entities. And then the next element of that is how the entities relate to each other. So, okay, Danny Leibrandt is a person, maybe, he set up his LinkedIn, he set up his Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. He's putting out content across all these platforms. Okay, well, Danny Leibrandt might be a person, but then there's the corroborative and, confirming information, which is information that is coming from other people. So that might be, you can see me here. This is me on the Bright Local webinar. This is me speaking at DigiMark Chicago. This is this third one here, me speaking on the Pest Control Millionaire podcast. This is me on Dennis's podcast. This is me and all of these different shows. All of that corroborates the information on your name. Now, I know this might seem like kind of crazy. I have to pick the one with the picture. This might feel like kind of crazy and you don't feel like, how can this apply to me? I will get into all of that. So just kind of give me a second here. So like I said, Google understands you and your company as an entity. So you potentially as a plumbing company owner, your company is an entity and you individually is an entity. Now, why is that important? So Google likes to essentially rank websites and prefers websites. And by the way, this also ties into large language models like ChatGPT or Google's AI overview or Google's new thing, which now they have AI mode. Google launched this thing called EEAT. So Google's quality rater guidelines were originally based on EAT. We can see that here. Our latest update gets an E for experience. So originally it was EAT, which was expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So this is what they wanted to see in the content that they were ranking, that are you actually an expert? Everything should be dependent on what Google is looking for. So when we're looking at EAT, this is expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Google wants to see that because that's actually what people want to see. So when I'm thinking about, the latest news in my area, and maybe there's a hurricane or maybe something crazy happened, I want to listen to experts. I want to listen to authorities. I want to listen to people that are trustworthy. So that's the same thing that Google is optimizing for, is can we have content that clearly demonstrates this, and that it is clearly by experts, and that you are authoritative and that you are trustworthy. And kind of the big unlock here is that it was EAT. They have now added an E for experience. So now what they've done is, with all of the AI tools, with all of the LLMs, with ChatGPT and people generating content at a mass scale, how can Google and these other search engines make sure that they are showing quality content that isn't just AI generated, but it does actually have a person behind it? And it's not just like, I remember when ChatGPT and these other tools were just coming out, and I thought it was so cool that I could generate 100 blogs with this one tool, Draft Horse, in like 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, no one can beat me. There's no way anyone else is doing this. But those blogs didn't really rank. And that's because Google was prepared for this. So they added an E for experience, which now means that Google is going to prefer content that has some degree of experience tied to it. So it says right here, does content also demonstrate that it was produced with some degree of experience, such as actual use of a product, having actually visited a place, or communicating what a person experienced? And there are some situations where really what you value most is content produced by someone who has firsthand life experience on the topic at hand. Now, this can vary depending on the industry. Like, it might be harder to demonstrate experience with like a software company or to a degree e-commerce or something like that. But when you have a home service local business, like you're a plumber, this directly applies to you. You are doing active jobs in person. So we want to make sure that we are regularly demonstrating experience. So I guess you could say there are two ways to demonstrate it. And that is, number one, talking about it, and number two, actually showing you do the thing. So you could be talking about it on a or on a podcast, maybe, and that might be you talking about it, or that's actually a video on the field, and you go to, a client's house, a customer's house, and you are actively recording and showing, hey, here's what we do when, one of the pipes leak. I don't know much about plumbing, but you get the idea that Google is looking for all this information, and you might question how this ties into things. Well, the website is actually, isn't that just text? But we can put all of these videos on the website. We can put all of these photos on the website and on the Google Business Profile and on the Yelp page and now on the socials and all these other places. So something else I want to hit home, which I'm kind of going to jump around here, so I apologize here. I hope this is valuable.
It is.
Something else that you need to be aware of is how much Google is pulling from socials now. So a lot of people will just only focus on the website for SEO, and okay, well, I have the right website pages. What do I put on the website pages? That's part of it, but there's still a lot more to that. So something else I love to show, and actually I already showed this, is when you do a search for, maybe it's your name or your company name or whatever. By the way, I recommend everyone do this. the things that you are trying to rank on, especially your company, this would probably be number one. Go search up your company on Google and see what shows up. Like almost no one does this, but everyone's trying to find the latest SEO tool. Do I use SEMrush, Ahrefs, Moz, PageSpeed Insights, Meta SEO Inspector? Like, first off, let's see what's actually showing up. When we actually do a search for your company name, what shows up? Because at the end of the day, that's what we care about. The same way that at the end of the day, we just care about the revenue generated. The first step here is really, we just care about what's showing up on Google. So if we search up your company name and you don't even show up, or, your Google business profile with your reviews doesn't show up, or barely anything else shows up. So when we do the search on me, we can see, my personal website, my LinkedIn profile, my Instagram, all my latest posts on Twitter, my Facebook, me on a podcast, me on another podcast.
So a plumbing company owner is probably going to be asking himself, I can get my company to rank and show well. I've got 500 reviews. You'll see the company all over the web. But what about me, the owner, personally? And what would be the value in getting a plumbing company owner himself the knowledge panel? And one argument is that it embeds you locally in the community. As plumbing companies grow larger, their emotional relationship with the customer gets harder to sustain because now it becomes a faceless brand. If the owner can get a knowledge panel, now people will associate the company with a human being, and that could be of big value. And Danny, the question is, in your view, how would a plumbing company owner achieve what you've just achieved right here on screen?
Well, yeah, I'll tie to a different aspect of value as well, that when you look at Google's guidelines, it is abundantly clear, because I've been through most of these at this point. I would try to find out, but there's so many different ones. I forget the one that I'm thinking of particularly, but several of Google's guidelines, which these are all public documents, will say that Google is looking for an expert that is creating the content. Who is creating the content? Are they authoritative? Are they trustworthy? Are they well known in the space? Google is actively looking at the author of all of your content. And that's honestly why Google is opting for social platforms a little bit more, at least, than they were. Because social platforms, it's very clear. Like if you go on my LinkedIn page, this is clearly my LinkedIn page. Like Danny Leibrandt, 10,000 followers. He's posting all the time. To create a valid LinkedIn or a verified LinkedIn account, you have to show your driver's license, and it has to actually validate you as a person. So Google naturally likes actually showing these things because there is an author behind the content. So this is another aspect that very few people know about, is that when you are creating content for your company, whether that be on YouTube or your website or your podcast or your socials, there should always be an author behind the content. Now, that's kind of hard to do when you just have a random social post or a random website page. So usually what we like to do, and I know this sounds complex, but it is totally possible, and you can do this, is repurposing from video content. And that way, that clearly establishes an author, that we actually, like me and Paul here, we're doing a podcast. Hopefully this gets turned into a YouTube video and a website page, and you can identify yourself as the author. And then you can say, hey, here's what I learned from the podcast with Danny. And you are a validated author because we actually did the podcast. You can actually watch the YouTube video and see. It's not like, oh, well, hey, here's the top things I've learned from Neil Patel or Alex Hormozi or whatever. Like, that's great. But let's actually demonstrate that there's an author. And then, like you're saying, let's build up the author profile. So now here's kind of the consensus of what I'm saying is that when you have an ascribed author to all of your content, and you build up your author profile, as in your personal brand, as in your knowledge panel, like here, what happens is that all of your content then, therefore, gets boosted because Google recognizes me as an entity. And now Google wants to boost all of the content that I'm making and am associated with because Google clearly understands that I'm getting into that here on the show.
Hold on, Danny, a quick question. How long did it take you with 52 episodes and the content you're putting out over social to get to that knowledge panel?
I think I already had this unlocked almost a year ago. So it didn't take me too long. Now, there is kind of a caveat there is that
and how do you get it? Does Google just give it? Sorry to interrupt. Does Google just give it to you? Or do you have to apply? How do you get it?
So you have to establish your presence across these different platforms. First off, it's about what you say about yourself. So what are you saying about yourself? First off, we need to have a website for all of the entities that we want to establish. So I'm an entity and I want to establish the entity for myself. So I have DannyLeibrandt.com. So everyone should go and claim their personal, claim your name as a website and build that up a little bit. So you have your personal website. Everyone should have a LinkedIn account. Everyone should have an Instagram. Everyone should have a Twitter. Everyone should have a Facebook. Everyone should have a YouTube. So first off, a lot of people know about building citations for your company. I feel like a lot of company owners know this at this point, but you should also be establishing citations for yourself as well. So that includes all of these platforms and then anything else you can sign up for as well. So that might be a Pinterest or a Threads or a Reddit or a Quora or these other different platforms. Having as much corroborative information out there as possible. So my kind of two rules of thumbs with citations like this is we want to have as much information as possible, and we want to have as much of the same information as possible.
And so when you've done all that legwork, does Google as a search engine simply recognize that in totality and the knowledge panel automatically materializes? Or did you have to go through additional steps to register or apply or so forth?
So you will get, if you do it right, you will see a little bit of a knowledge panel pop up. Once you have built up enough of an entity that you have a good amount of followers, you're putting out a good amount of content, maybe you're going on other people's podcasts, maybe you're doing PR, maybe you have a successful company. All of these things tie into your SEO and your personal brand. So this will show up. And then once this shows up, then you would click, and actually I say this in this post, we can just go through it here. So again, I say all these same steps: set up your website with name.com, post somewhat consistently, get links and mentions from reputable sources. And then step number 5 is claim your knowledge panel when Google suggests it. So you go, and these are the 3 steps. You search your name in Google and click the 3 dots, like you'll see the 3 dots.
So to put this simply then, the knowledge panel is basically an affirmation by Google that you exist in an authentic way, that they trust you as through your social, through your content and your videos that you're producing, that you are a real person with something of authority to say. And then they reward you, Google does, with a panel so that when people search under your name, up blasts an organized collage of all of the sources of your authority. And in order to get that, they come to you. You don't go to them. You have to put in the hard work.
No, you do. So
go ahead.
I just pulled this on the screen. You can see this, right?
I do.
So it will show usually your name in bold once you've established yourself a little bit as an entity. You click on these 3 dots and then there's this claim this knowledge panel. So I guess, yeah, sure. They show the bolded, but you still have to claim the knowledge panel. And then that's when it really fills out.
Well, you have to claim it. But in other words, you can't request that. It's an invitation. It's not an application. You got to do the hard work. then one fine day the bold lettering appears, and you can claim it. And
Yeah.
the advantage to you and of relevance to a plumbing company owner or any business owner really is that it then allows you and your brand and your name to rise one level above your peers. Is that fair to say?
I think the main power impact in terms of building a personal brand and knowledge panel for yourself is that it boosts all of the content that you put out. So since the person listening to this, you might be the plumbing company owner, all of the content that's published on the site should not be published under your agency or published under your new technician or new social media person, whatever. It should be published under your name because you are the expert and the authority, like I was talking about with the EAT stuff. So everything should be published under your name, and assuming you've built that personal brand and knowledge panel, now all of the content will perform better because Google trusts the author behind the content.
And do you know, this is key. Does Google have a recognition if a business person wanted to make the author the name of the company rather than them personally? Is that possible?
That's possible, and you can do that on, maybe more general pages. But what we've started to do is have an author for every single page because it makes them perform better and Google likes it more. So ideally, we do that.
Thank you, Danny. What we learned today from Danny Leibrandt is that building your personal brand through a podcast can help elevate your plumbing company's brand above your peer group. And Google will reward you with enhanced visibility and eventually things like a knowledge panel.